Hey, thank you for tuning in to CBC Studios. This week we have Madison Cawthron. She's over in Manchester, England, and she's a missionary that we help support as she is working with refugees as they travel from all over the world to come to Manchester, England. And she's there greeting them and bringing the gospel of Jesus Christ. So we are here today just to encourage her, ask her questions, see how she is doing. So take a listen and tune in for more interviews coming from CBC Studios from CBC's Missionary Partners. Madison, what's up? How are you?
Great. So good to see you.
Great to see you. Where are you? Like, what are you,
Where
like,
am I?
yeah, what's this room you're in? Like, what country are you in? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, right now I'm in a little tiny room, which I call my office and my closet in Manchester, England. And so Manchester's it's the second biggest city in England and it's in the north. So second to London, if you go north about 5 hours by car, maybe, you'll reach Manchester. And then if you keep going north, you'll hit Scotland. So I'm up north, living in a big city. Manchester's, I would say, about 2.5 million people, the greater
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Manchester area. So
Yeah.
it's there's a lot of Brits, but there's also a lot of immigrants as well from all over the world. So it's a pretty diverse place.
Yeah, so like what is the kind of the city like? Is it you know, very industrial? It's inland, right? So
Mhm.
there's not like shipyards and things like that. So kind of what's is it very tech heavy? Like what's kind of going on there that brings in the income that makes the city so big?
Yeah, it's a good question actually. I've learned a lot since I moved here about kind of the history of the area. So many people would claim this city was kind of the start of the Industrial Revolution. So it's
Yeah.
full of old brick buildings, factories.
Yep.
So when the states were producing cotton, they were shipping it across to Liverpool, and then the
Hmm.
cotton was traveling up the river to Manchester, and then it was being made into clothing, cotton
Yeah.
clothing. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of history here as far as industry goes. It's
Hmm.
actually it was a really big city, and it's smaller now than it was during the Industrial Revolution. So obviously not as much industry here now. There's still a lot of
Yeah.
factories. I would say that's probably the main thing, but a lot of just companies have kind of moved into the city
Yeah.
itself. So parts of Manchester are starting to look a little bit like London if you've ever traveled to
Yeah.
London. But yeah, it's a super unique place because of that history.
Yeah, it's really cool. The I know like so I can't remember the name of the river, but the river that goes from Manchester to Liverpool and all the
Mhm.
locks there is that's like the big connection that made like Liverpool the seaport as big as it is because it was moving stuff from the US to Manchester. And
Yeah.
it's yeah, that whole north side of England, like very interesting, just the history between like kind of the 1800s to now and just how it's the Industrial Revolution has developed this whole area. So yeah, that's really cool. So where are you kind of in the city? I mean, are you like smack dab in the middle? Are you on the outskirts? Like what's the building that you're living in? I have like this idea that you're in like this massive dorm room with, a bunch of people that might have immigrated to Manchester. So what like kind of yeah, what's the place that you're living in like?
Yeah, it's a good question. My neighborhood is fairly British.
Hmm.
So I'm living in kind of the northeastern side of the city. I'm about a 20
Okay.
minute walk from the city center. So I would say most immigrants are in the south of Manchester. The
Hmm.
government tries to do a good job of kind of spreading people out throughout the city.
Okay.
But there are certain neighborhoods that are more Pakistani or more Arab. The area that I'm in is mostly British, but we also have a lot of Iranians living here. And I'm in a house, which is such a gift
Okay.
because it's a city, and it's you usually end up in a flat or an apartment.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to have just a small backyard with a fence around it that I can go
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
up at the sky if I need to, especially right
Yeah.
now during lockdown.
Yeah.
But yeah, the beauty of living so close to the city center is that if I need to travel to visit someone in a park or in their home, I can get to kind of the bus station and the train
Hmm.
station easily.
That's
So
awesome.
even though I'm in a British area, I can travel easily to go out and meet with
Yeah.
immigrants.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the great things about, I mean, just Europe in general is like public
Super easy
transportation
to travel. Yeah.
is a blessing. That's a very foreign concept here in the US. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. So like what's the ministry that you're doing? You've mentioned like immigrants, people from Pakistan. So kind of like, yeah, what's your purpose over there
Mhm.
and what does your day to day look like?
Yeah, that's a much different question now than it was about 8 months ago. So
I'm
I'll
sure,
start.
yeah.
I'll start 8 months ago. So when I moved here about a little over 2 years ago now, and I'm working in association with a little multicultural church that
Hmm.
meets in the city center. So I would say we have about 30 to 40 people in our church and between 10 and 15 nations in our church. So,
Wow, 30 to 40
um,
people, but 10 different nations.
yes, yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome. That's really
yeah.
cool.
So, it's fascinating just kind of learning about the different cultures, and each of us brings something different to
Yeah.
church and the idea of living together for the
Yeah.
Lord and in the Lord. But I'm kind of working with the church to disciple people who are coming to the Lord from
Hmm.
different backgrounds, mostly from refugee asylum seeker backgrounds. We have quite a few Iranian, brand new Iranian believers who would join our church and just
Yeah.
want to know more about how to walk with God. So helping to walk alongside people in that way, but then also trying to reach out into the communities and find people who don't know God and help
Yeah.
them find God. So
Yeah.
that could be through an English class. That could be through just evangelism on the
Hmm.
streets. It looks like a lot of different things. But yeah, mostly all in association with this international multicultural church.
Wow,
So I think,
that's awesome.
yeah, I would say the unique thing about this church and the reason why it's here is because um, what I didn't start the church, so the church was
Hmm.
already in existence when I first arrived. But
Yeah.
the team that did start the church, when they began working here, they noticed that many of the British churches were just reaching out to British people.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
probably you've heard that Europe, Christianity is diminishing in Europe, so
Yeah.
it's becoming more secular. People are less interested in God, and so British churches, for the most part, are trying to reach their own people for good reason,
Yeah.
because there's so many people who are depressed, so many people who need
Hmm.
to know God who don't know Him, but there's not so much of an interest in reaching out to immigrants and asylum seekers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this was kind of an initiative to reach out to those people that weren't really being reached by
Yeah.
British churches.
Wow, that's awesome. Um, so like you kind of um hit on the COVID, how it was different 8 months ago for you.
Hmm.
So how
Hmm.
is it kind of for you today with the church's meeting? Are you guys online? How has your evangelism changed and discipleship methods changed over the past 8 months?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
It was, I think for all of us, it was just really sudden, wasn't it? So
Yeah.
everything that I was doing had to do with meeting people in their homes and meeting in person for English
Yeah.
classes, and all of a sudden everything stopped. And so there definitely was a period of time where we just had to sit down and think, how does this even work now?
Yeah.
For asylum seekers and immigrants, they get a certain amount of money every week,
Hmm.
and they're not allowed to work. So that money goes towards food, that money goes towards
Yeah.
maybe 2 gigs for their phone every month. But now everything's happening online. So how do we reach them if they can't pay for a phone plan?
Hmm.
So thankfully, most of them, because they still have to connect with families and be in English classes or different things,
Yeah.
they have phones, they have technology. So we're spending all of our days on Zoom, as
Yeah.
many Zoom meetings as we can fit into a day. Um, a lot of just moving things online,
Yeah.
trying to call people, talk to them on the phone. England and in Manchester especially has been locked down pretty much since March. We had about two
Yeah.
weeks where were allowed to enter other people's homes, but
Hmm.
at the end of July, they said, nope, you can't go into other people's homes. You can only meet
Yeah.
people in parks. And with
Wow.
winter coming now, it's cold and rainy,
Yep.
and nobody
Yep.
wants to be out in the park. So I
Yeah.
think things will probably be online at least until the spring here. So yeah,
Yeah.
online English classes, online meetings. We've been doing some evangelism out in the streets, but
Hmm.
again, it's a bit limited with handing out paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we wanted to hand out tracts or anything like that, it's more conversation oriented,
Yeah.
which I like better anyways. So
Yeah.
yeah,
For
we
those
can do.
listening in like the US and specifically kind of Western North Carolina, lockdown in the rest of the world is they mean lock down. Like our lockdown is very um, kind of not lockdown-ish really compared to what other countries, specifically in Europe, just because everyone is so close.
Mhm.
Like you know, when you talk about your house, like I know just from living there, that the houses are right next to each other. Everyone's backyard is right next to each other, and you know, public transportation is a huge thing. So yeah, when a country in Europe goes on lockdown, they really need to do it because it's just a whole different lifestyle, as opposed
Right.
to kind of Western North Carolina,
Right.
where
Yeah.
we've got
Yeah.
like mountains. You know, you got a mountain separating you and your neighbor. So like, yeah, lockdown is just very, very different. So
Yeah.
I
We
can imagine that's
Americans.
hard.
Yeah. Yeah. We like space, don't we? But the
Yes.
British and European cities are just so old that you
Mhm.
can't have space because they were
Right.
just always there. So they grew out
Yep.
over time. And yeah, in order to go anywhere, I don't have a car, so I've got to jump on a bus or a
Yes.
train. And it's just, you know, you have hundreds of people going through the same areas every single
Yep.
day. So disease just spreads much more quickly
Yeah.
in a place like Manchester.
Yeah. So, how are like the people group that you are ministering to? So you've said you've got Iranians, Pakistanis. What other ethnic groups do you have?
You name it.
Really? Okay.
If you know anything about unreached people groups, so
Yeah.
there's countries and peoples in the world right now that we would say they don't have access to the gospel, or they don't have enough Christian influence within their country in order to reach themselves with the
Yeah.
gospel. And of the top 15, I think seven or eight of those are some of the biggest populations of immigrants in
Wow.
Manchester. So we have Yemeni, Pakistani, Iranian, Syrian. Yeah, I mean, pick Bangladeshi,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, a lot of people from Africa,
Hmm.
different countries in Africa. Yeah,
Yeah.
name the country. We have people from that country here.
That's all. So how are they being accepted by like the English community in Manchester? Is there like open arms or is there some kind of tension there? How does that look?
Yeah, I imagine it looks similar to the way that it looks in the States.
Yeah.
Some people are okay with it. Some people welcome immigrants, and some people are a bit resistant to the idea of people coming in and
Yeah.
taking jobs, or harming the
Hmm.
economy in any way.
Yeah.
I have friends, immigrant friends, that have been discriminated against. I had one friend, she's wears a hijab, she's Muslim, so
Hmm.
she's very obviously an immigrant, and she
Yes.
was standing on the street and someone drove their car directly into a puddle of water
Oh
next to her
no.
and just splashed
No.
water all over her. And she told me, she said, I'm just so frustrated because like
Yeah.
it's just who I am. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So some people are welcoming, and then some people aren't so welcoming.
Yeah. Yeah, that's difficult, and especially if I mean, not that like, you know, England is a Christian nation, but you look around, you see all these kind of old churches and you want to like, you know, show that the love of Christ and things like that. And if behavior like that is going on, it just makes the job so much harder, so much
Yeah,
more difficult.
yeah, it's
Um,
true. And it's the conflict and contrast of cultures is another thing. I think
yeah.
most people from the global south and from the Middle East are from cultures that are highly hospitable, and in order
Yes.
to show love, you have to welcome someone into your home and into your
Yeah.
life. And for someone in England, the best way of showing love is to just give someone their space, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like, I'm not going to ask
Yeah.
anyone into my home because that makes
Yeah.
us both uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that it's just very difficult for those two cultures to kind of understand each other and live together well. So the immigrant is feeling rejected while the British person is thinking they're doing a good job of just giving this person their space, you
Yeah.
know. So love is communicated in different ways, and that can make it difficult.
Yeah. England's the land of introverts. I love it.
Works out well for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So what made you want to go over to England? Was it um was it the country of England that drew you there, or was it the amount of immigrants? Like what kind of how did you end up and how did you end up in Manchester?
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, I wanted to do ministry for most of my life. So
Hmm.
from when I was probably 8 years old, I was telling people one day I'm going to be overseas
Yeah.
doing ministry, but I never really knew what I was doing, but I didn't feel drawn to certain people or
Hmm.
even certain type of ministry. I just wanted people to know God. But I would say right around the time that the conflict in Syria started to get worse, um, I was trying to just follow along with the news, what's happening, refugees
Yeah.
coming into Europe, I ended up traveling to Greece and spending some time in a refugee camp in
Yeah.
Greece and kind of meeting people from those different places and just realizing this what an opportunity this is because
No
people are
kidding.
coming
Yeah.
from places where it's illegal to hear about Christianity and it's illegal
Hmm.
to become a Christian, and they're coming into a place like Greece or England
Yeah.
where they can choose to follow Christ and they can ask
Right.
questions. And if I were to move to Syria, it would take me years to learn the language, and then it would take me
Yes.
more years to learn the
Yes.
culture and to be welcomed into the culture. And
Hmm.
even then, I would have to be so careful about how I do things and what I
Yeah.
say. And in England, I can jump in and I'm speaking English, and they're trying to learn English, and it's just it's a lot faster,
Yeah. It's a good
but
like
it's a
middle
lot more
place. It's a
free.
good yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a middle place, and
Awesome.
it's fascinating just because um, British culture and European culture is not necessarily a Christian culture at the moment,
Yeah.
but it's middle ground. It's middle ground to meet people and love them.
Yeah, I mean, even trying to understand the Northern English accent can be a bit of a challenge as well.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Manchester accent is not clean by any means. It's a little
yeah,
more kind of rough, a bit like it's kind of flip-flopped. If you think of like in the south of England, you have the very proper London accent, and then in the north, it's kind of a little more rough and harder to understand, a little more Scottish, right? So the further north
yeah,
you go into England, the closer you get to Scotland, the more Scottish you sound. So the northern accent is a bit like the southern accent in the US.
yeah. That's how I
It's got kind
explain
of,
it.
yeah, it's kind of got this interesting stigma of not as clean and pleasant sounding. So yeah, that's funny. You probably have to learn. How to communicate both with the English, but then also the immigrants and understand that the different accents there for sure.
Accents.
So are
Yeah,
you learning any what do they speak? Farsi?
Farsi. Yeah, Iranians
Yes.
speak Farsi.
Yes.
I took a Farsi course. So
Okay.
I learned some basics. It's really difficult to learn language when you're not
Yeah.
immersed in a setting. So
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
immersed in a British English setting. So I'm learning British phrases, and
Yep.
probably some things come out more British in the way that I say it just because I'm immersed in that setting right now.
Yeah.
As far as Farsi goes, I have to be a lot more intentional about learning. So my way of trying to understand Iranian culture has been trying to get myself into Iranian homes for Iranian
Yeah.
food, asking, what does this mean? How do you make this meal?
Yeah.
What is this meal called? How is my pronunciation? Am I saying this word right? And
Yeah.
and that's helping me build relationships with people, but it's also helping me to understand a bit of the culture and a bit of the language. I don't think I'll
Nice.
ever be fluent, unless I move to Iran, but I'll do
Sure.
my best to
Yeah.
learn what I can here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So share a story with us, like, I don't know, a friend maybe that you've met or a testimony of someone, um, of, yeah, just like kind of something encouraging, that we can hear.
Yeah. Um, there's so many stories. I'll try and think of one that's more recent. It's been a quiet season, as it has been for a lot of people, just
Yeah.
because everyone's stuck inside. But one blessing is that my housemate and I, she's my teammate, we've been able to meet with some some people from the English class who are interested in studying the Bible. And once a week on Saturday in the morning, we meet for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we read
Hmm.
through a story in the Bible and we talk about it. And that's it. We
That's
read
awesome.
story in the Bible, we talk about it, and then we pray for them, any prayer requests that they have. So none of these people are Christians,
Yeah.
but they're all interested in learning about the Bible. And over the past 8 months, as we've all been locked down together, Zooming together,
Yeah.
we've watched them kind of grow in their love for Jesus.
Yeah.
While still not being Christians, they love the stories in the Bible and they love Jesus. And one lady, she's from Poland, so she comes from a Catholic background.
Yep.
She understands in her head. There's a lot of Bible stories that she doesn't know, but she understands in her head um, how to be a Christian or how to be a good Catholic, but she doesn't have a relationship with God. And the other week she told us, um, she said, I went to church and I never understood anything. And I hated going to church, but I knew that I had to
Mm.
because that's part of being a Catholic. And she said,
Yeah.
now when I go to church, I hear the stories and I love it. And I'm so interested in those stories because I understand what they're about. And so she's asked us for a Bible. We've given her a Bible and she's kind of reading through the stories on her own. But we're just excited to see what happens when she decides to take that step and
Yeah.
accept Christ, and we can start walking with her.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, there's plenty of stories like that that I could share,
Yeah.
but that's been kind of a recent highlight.
Yeah.
We've been meeting with her, a lady from Indonesia, a lady from China. The three of them have been really the consistent ones, and
Yeah.
they're all fascinated by Jesus.
Yeah. Are you meeting mostly with females?
Yes, I am. We have men that come to the English classes as well,
Yeah.
but especially within Middle Eastern cultures, it's not very appropriate for me to be
Yeah.
meeting with a Middle Eastern man. So I
Hmm.
try as much as I can to just meet with the ladies.
Yeah.
And our team is four women and two men on our ministry
Okay.
team. So
Nice.
we need more men who can. There's
Yeah.
so many men that want to be involved that we just don't have the freedom to meet up with.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, we stick with women,
That's
the
awesome.
ladies on our team. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they love that if they're coming from a culture maybe where, women don't necessarily have quite the same rights and things like that, and then come over here and, hopefully, they're greeted and meted by you and you're showing interest in them. I'm sure that probably is just like a whole game changer. So that's awesome. What like kind of what's your future plans? What you think you'll stay there forever, or are you planning to come back? Like what's it looking like?
Yeah, it's all up to the government and
Yeah.
my visa.
Yeah.
So I'm on a 3-year visa right now. I have
Okay.
2 year. I've been here for 2 years. I have 1 year left. Next year will kind of be the big. Do I want to reapply
Hmm.
or head somewhere else? And I think at this point I've decided, unless God directly shows me another place to be, this is where I want to be. It's been some of the hardest years of my life. And at times I thought it would be so much easier to be working in a monocultural setting where I
Yes.
understand people and they understand me.
Yeah.
But if I'm willing to push into that, I think there's something beautiful about
Yeah.
making multicultural community work. So
Yeah.
yeah, if God has me here, then I'm planning to stay.
That's awesome. What's
Yeah.
kind of a big need that both you have personally, and then also the ministry that you're working with, and then also the community?
Hmm. I think the biggest need is just prayer.
Mm.
Um, yeah, the interesting thing about multicultural community is that everyone is bringing their own self, their culture, their language, their lack of language, and all of that comes together into um, church
Yeah.
and church life, and it can be really, really messy, and
Yes.
it can be very easy to offend, cause
Yeah.
offense, be offended. Um, if I had $1 for every time that I've offended someone
Yeah.
accidentally, I would be
Yeah.
so rich.
Yep.
Just
Yep.
because, not everyone speaks English fluently,
Hmm.
and I mean, I've mentioned a little bit about the cultural differences in
Yeah.
just hospitality, British hospitality and Middle Eastern hospitality, and what I've found is that if Christ is not the center, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so it's a blessing in disguise. It feels like a curse
Right.
because it's so easy to lose people
Yes.
to offense or misunderstanding. But it's a
Yeah.
blessing because if we're not oriented around the foundation of Christ, then we're not going to go anywhere.
Yep.
So if we go somewhere, that's amazing, and God must be involved
Yeah. Yeah.
because we have nothing in common except Christ.
Right.
So the biggest prayer is just that we would be unified, and that
Hmm.
we would be unified around Christ as our
Yeah.
cornerstone and as the one that we're living for.
Yeah.
And then another thing that we're kind of before the lockdown, we were thinking about church, and the way that I understand church is as an American, which is or at least my American experience of church has been, you have worship, and
Hmm.
then you have the message,
Yep.
and then maybe like a little bit of fellowship at the end,
Yeah.
and then you leave, and that's church.
And it's home
But
for
for someone,
football.
yeah, exactly, yeah, get home in time for golf or
Yeah.
football or whatever
Yeah.
needs to happen. And that's just something I put in my schedule. And if I go to church, I'm a good Christian, and that's really nice.
Yes.
Um, and maybe I should do a devotional in the morning. But with someone from a Middle Eastern background, that's not. There's no concept of church in that form.
Right.
Someone from a Muslim country is used to praying 5 times a day, washing their hand, going to
Yeah.
mosque on Friday. Um, and so for a Middle Easterner or for someone outside of a Western context, when they come to England or come to Manchester, they join a British church and they think this is church. I
Yeah.
come, I listen, I leave, and then I live the rest of my life the way I want
Yeah.
to live the rest of my life. And so as a team, we've been trying to figure out how can we do church in a way where people feel welcomed from a Middle Eastern setting, but also don't absorb the things about Western culture that aren't necessarily biblical.
Right.
It's weird to say, church, Western church is not biblical, but what is biblical about church that we can take in as a multicultural community
Hmm.
and live as a
Yeah.
multicultural community. And so this is a long answer to this question. But our first step towards that was going to be to kind of split everyone off into house churches and to meet in homes three weeks a month, and then do a big celebration together.
Hmm.
And that would kind of incorporate the aspect of hospitality and welcome of the
Yeah.
Middle East, but also allow some time for getting to know each other, but then also some more intimate
Yeah.
learning and
Yeah.
teaching and growth. But when lockdown happened, we thought this is perfect because we can't
Yeah.
meet in churches. We'll
Right.
just meet in homes. But
Yeah.
the first thing they said is you can't meet in homes, but churches can still meet.
Yeah.
So we're like, no,
Oh,
that's just, what do we do now?
yeah.
So we've been meeting on Zoom. We had our first in-person meeting last Saturday, but our hope is to continue to kind of develop that idea, begin meeting in
Yeah.
small groups in homes, as small house churches, but then we need kind of a place where we can run ministry out of, a kind of a central place where people can come learn English, have a
Yeah.
cup of coffee, meet someone.
A cup of
We
tea.
don't
Come on.
cup of tea, cup of
Yeah.
tea, cup of tea. I'm still drinking coffee, but I do like a good cup of tea from a good British friend. So yeah, we're praying that God would show us if it's His will to purchase some sort of ministry center where we can have either a cafe or
Yes.
just
That's awesome.
some offices for meetings, counseling. I think that would
Yeah.
be good, especially if we're moving out into homes. So that's not necessarily what we're doing for
Yeah.
sure. But we're putting it before the Lord right now, and we're asking Him if it's His will that He would make it
Mm,
clear that's something that would help the ministry.
that's awesome. Um, so in just kind of wrapping this up, like, have you had any chance to maybe just get out of the city and just kind of explore a little bit and just kind of take a break? Because obviously vocational ministry is exhausting,
Mhm.
specific kind of emotionally and mentally. So have you like rest for yourself to maybe just go explore and things like that?
Yeah, one of the beautiful things about Manchester is that it's
Yes.
surrounded by hills.
Yep.
And so I don't have a car. I don't have a driving license, as they call it here.
Yeah.
I don't have a driver's license. So as often as I can, I jump in a car with a friend and drive out to the hills. If you go north, you hit the Lake District, which is higher mountains. It's beautiful. It's kind of
Yeah.
like North Carolina, except without trees.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So I love that more than anything. If I can get
Yeah.
up north, that's
Yeah.
about 2 or 3 hours. But yeah, I've explored kind of the surrounding hills and areas,
Nice.
and it's so nice to just be able to get out of the city,
Yes.
take a deep breath.
Yep.
It's cold. The wind blows really hard in the
Yeah.
mountains because it's coming off. I guess over the Atlantic
Yep.
through Liverpool and up
Yeah.
into Manchester.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's windy and cold, but there's nothing like a pub
Yeah.
at the end of a walk to just sit and warm
Yeah.
up by
Yeah.
a fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful up there. I love hiking over there because you start your hike and you already have a view.
Yeah.
Whereas here in the US, you have to
Gotta get to the
hike
top.
to the view,
Yeah.
which can sometimes be, extremely rewarding. There's probably a sermon in there somewhere, but yeah, I just love like, starting out in the valley hiking and there's like sheep everywhere and
Hmm.
stone walls. And as you just, hike up whatever mountain you're doing, it's just kind of, yeah, beautiful views and you get to the top and it's like just fantastic. Um, I
Yeah.
did Scarfell Pike probably 10 years ago, which is the highest mountain in England, not in the United Kingdom, but in England. And it's, yeah, just a beautiful place, the whole Lakes District, the Yorkshire Moors. I don't know if you've had a chance to go out there, but
Yeah.
that's like fantastic as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome. That's great that you've had that opportunity for sure. So yeah, can I pray for you last thing we do before we sign off and send you on your way again? Just
Absolutely.
a quick prayer for some of these needs that you've mentioned.
Yeah.
So,
And can I just say too, just a thank you for all of the prayers and the support
yeah.
and everything that I've received from CBC over the last 2 years, really,
Hmm.
whether through email, whether through text, whether through financial support. It's you don't realize how much of a gift that is until
Yeah.
you're in another country and you're feeling
Yeah.
lonely or you're
Yeah.
feeling the weight of ministry, and just that encouragement through that support has meant the world to me. So thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
We'll close out with prayer then. Father, we thank you so much for just this opportunity to connect. Thank you for Madison and just her heart and her willingness to accept this mission that you have sent her on. We just ask for some of these things, such as just for the church to grow, for them to have a spot where they can meet, kind of a central location, turn it into a coffee shop, just a place for people to come and fellowship and get to know you, that things like COVID just will not hinder your ministry and what this group is doing. Just keep Madison safe, give her rest. Any travel, keep her safe. Father, encourage her. And we just ask that you bless this ministry and bless the people coming over, Father, that are just looking for you and seeking you. We thank you for all you're doing and just who you are. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So,
Thank you,
Madison,
Chris.
yeah, thank you so much. This is awesome. Hopefully, in 2021, we have ministries in France and Scotland that we also support. And we're
Mm.
hoping to get out there and film and kind of do a big, long sweep of all the ministries. So, you can't leave England until we come and say hi in person and
All right.
film and get a bunch of great stories and content that we can bring back to the States and share with everyone.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
If you
but
come to us first, you might pick up some tag-alongs. We'll come with you and
I love
check
it.
out the other
Yes.
ministries too.
Yeah, head up to Scotland and then head down to
Oh yeah.
France. Yeah. So
Sounds amazing.
well, hey, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your, I guess it's afternoon for you, it's morning
Yeah.
for us.
Yep.
So yeah, I know the days are getting really short
Yep.
and the nights are super long.
Yes,
'Cause yeah.
it's 2 days ago we had a 1 hour time change, so the sun
Okay.
sets at 5:30 now.
Oh, and it's only getting worse. Oh
Only
man.
getting
Yeah.
worse. Yep.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, England is actually it's on the same latitude as like think of like Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
So like it's so far
So
north
far
that
north.
it just like the days in the winter are short.
Yeah.
And that's a drag for sure. So
My mom bought me this, I call it a happy light. They use them
yeah.
in the North, Alaska
Yes.
and Canada, and
Yeah.
it's extends the length of the day
Yeah.
in light form,
That's
which
awesome.
is
That's
pretty
awesome.
nice. Yeah.
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 Well, use it a lot. All right, Madison.
I
Well,
know.
thank you so much. We'll be praying for you, and hopefully we get to check in soon. All right.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Chris.
All right. See you, Madison.
See you.
Bye.